What we need is to become the best versions of ourselves, and things will work out naturally if that happens. But what are people doing right now? Even the people who want to fight injustice, what do? They're feeling terrible. They're angry. They're stressed. They're not able to communicate. They yell, they scream, they make nasty posts on the internet, on social media. It is not the way to go about enacting positive change. You've got to be positive to enact positive change. And that positivity starts with you. It starts inside you. Today, I want to talk to you about something that is so powerful, so transformative, that if you listen to this episode today and apply the concepts that we're going to talk about, you can not only just change your life, but you can change the life of others around you, and dare I say, even the world. And boy, does the world need changing. I mean, hopefully you don't watch too much news, but even if you're on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or seeing some of the highlights of what's going on, I mean, people are struggling big time. And people were struggling before, but this pandemic, as I'm sure you're very aware, we had these habits that we were all doing in our lives. Going out drinking with the boys, going out eating tapas and having white wine with the girls, whatever it is that you were doing, going shopping, whatever it is that you were doing, your routine got rudely interrupted, big time disrupted. And it happened to every single person really in the world. Maybe not every single person in the world. There's some isolated tribes in New Guinea off the coast of Indonesia. I'm sure they're okay. I'm sure their lives haven't been disrupted much, but the more modernized city that you live in, the more modernized country that you live in, boy, your life has been disrupted big time. And we've seen also the fallout of it. How is it any coincidence what happened in America with the Black Lives Matter thing, where in a key moment, this idiot decided to kneel on this black dude's neck. And even if the details about what happened aren't fully understood, or, like there was some controversy about it, is all I'm saying. It just was really bad timing, and it set off this chain reaction. Is it any wonder that so many people who were skeptical about what was going on with Big Pharma or got even pushed further? I mean, people got pushed to the extremes, and it showed up in their behavior. And so today I want to talk about a simple concept that, as I stated earlier, it can change your life. It can change the life of others around you. It can change the world if enough people did this. And here's something I want to say. With the way we work as human beings in the modern world, we like to intellectualize a lot. We like to come up with reasons and explain things. And I think that there's no better example of that than America. Now, obviously, I'm American, proudly American, by the way, and love that I'm from America. Love that I came with these values, but sometimes it's not all good. And one thing that's happened in America is that people come up with these ideas to explain why the world works the way it works, and they get very convoluted and complex. An example of that is carbs make you fat, and if you talk to people, they tell you all this complicated hormonal explanation and all this other stuff. And it's just like, no, man, it's not even proven by science, okay? It's been disproven by science, in fact. It's not that it hasn't been proven, it's been disproven. And some of the other things that we're struggling with, I know this is going to trigger some people, but I just got to say it, folks. Critical race theory, white supremacy. We come up with these ideas to explain the world we live in and explain why it's so messed up. And so there's a group of people more on the left. And by the way, in case you're listening and you're a little triggered by what I'm saying right now, I used to be quite far to the left. And now I am probably smack dab in the center, depending on the issue, lean a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left, but still mostly to the left, by the way, I would think. Of course, that goalpost has been moved, but we're not going to talk about that right now. And so we come up with these explanations about why society is so messed up. And it's especially troublesome for me to hear it sometimes from Americans because I've traveled. I haven't traveled around the world. I've lived around the world. It's very different. I didn't go on a 2-week vacation to Thailand. I lived there for I spent over 500 days in Thailand, and I know because I ended up getting kicked out of there. They said, you spent too much time in Thailand. You've got to go." So anyway, I've lived in South America, in Colombia, now in Brazil for the past 6 months, and in America. Our standards of what is terrible in the world is totally skewed. Like, in other words, it's so much worse in just about every other country. America's got to be in the top 5, I would say, of countries, maybe certainly, no doubt, top 10, but I would even say top 5 with all the help that everyone gets at every level of society. And if you're in disbelief about that, shaking your head, just look at some of the statistics. It's just crazy. I was looking at something yesterday about food insecurity. In other words, people who don't know where their next meal is going to come from. You know what people in the States complain about? They complain about, "Oh, I'm obese because I don't have easy access to cheap, healthy food." Certainly a problem, but people in Brazil, for example, where I am, 30% of the population is food insecure. In other words, they don't know if they're going to get their next meal or it's going to be hard to get their next meal, versus 11% for the United States. It's 3 times as much in terms of food insecurity. And the population is quite similar. So there's, I guess, over 300 million people in the United States. It's a very big country. And Brazil is a similar big country, not quite as big, I believe, and it has a population of over 200 million, and yet it's 30% with food insecurity versus 11% in the United States. And if you look at some of the other European countries, they have it better than the United States, although not by as much as you would think, and a much smaller population. We're talking about, 50 million people, 80 million people, 20 million people versus the over 300 million that we have in the United States. And why I'm choosing food is because, this is partly we talk about nutrition and health. And it's just think about that for a moment. In America, we complain about being overweight. In other words, we eat too much. And the reason we eat too much is partly because we have too much access to cheap food, cheap processed food, and it's more expensive to eat healthy. Versus other people are like, "Man, I don't have anything to eat. I don't have enough to eat. I don't know where my next meal is going to come from." It's a big difference, folks. It's a big difference. And not only have I looked at those statistics, I don't talk about this, but I give money every single month to people who are food insecure in the places that I stay in, and mostly in Brazil. We've really helped a lot in Brazil, but I've helped in Cambodia. I've helped in, other countries that I've been in. I raised money for a Cambodian tuk-tuk driver after he told me his story. I was like, man, I got to do something for this guy. People have it so much worse. And some of you are nodding your heads right now and like, yeah, we need to really kick those people in the ass, those Americans in the ass. They're not grateful. And you're right. They're lacking in gratitude. But this isn't the lesson I'm talking about here. The lesson is that we need to be super mindful of how we spread either positivity or negativity to each other. In other words, the ripple effect. In spite of all these things going on, in spite of all the people in the United States who are lacking the perspective to understand, like, hey, you've got it so amazingly well here. Even the people who are the most marginalized, most neglected, most, oppressed, whatever negative word you want to say, they have it so much better than other places. By the way, that doesn't mean that they don't need help. I believe they do, and I believe we should help. But what it means is people are lacking perspective, and it gets irritating sometimes. And I'm not sure, I think this podcast only, but interestingly enough, although I say that I'm more left leaning, people who are more right leaning tend to be the ones that hire me, that tend to be the ones that work with me, because I'm not a difficult person to get along with. I make people feel good, but I don't sugarcoat things. I never, I've tried to find an analogy here, but if someone needs to hear the truth, I don't mind telling it to them, or the truth, or maybe my opinion. I don't mind telling it to them. I don't mind giving tough love. I think it's important sometimes, but I make people feel good in spite of having a different political view, which, I'm not really a political guy so much. Well, in the popular sense, at least. And so what I want to talk about is this ripple effect. Well, what is it? Listen, if we're honest about why you come here and keep coming to this podcast, could we just sum it up and say that you listen to it because it makes you feel good? Can we just sum it up? I mean, it doesn't make you feel bad, right? Because if it did, you'd stop listening. Like, I'm sure there are people who came to listen to this podcast. They heard my voice, or I said something that really triggered them, and they bounced. They're gone. They feel bad. But you keep coming back. And our show is growing. We're hitting record download numbers right now, and which is good because it's like, wow, I need to really be accountable for what I say. I really need to not be inauthentic, but I need to make sure that I'm showing up as my best self here and doing my best job that I can, because I don't want to waste your time. And I certainly don't want to say something that isn't going to be helpful. Waste your time, in other words, right? I guess I just said that. It was a bit superfluous, I guess. What I want to tell you here is that if a lot of what we do here is to feel good, we can learn a lot from that. One of the reasons why I've decided to stay in Brazil so long is I feel good when I'm here. One of the reasons why I wanted to leave Miami is I wasn't feeling good when I was there. Now, there are many reasons. It wasn't just Miami, but it does have one of the highest rates in the U.S. and was voted number one several times in the past few years, the past few decades, I guess. So anyway, I want to make this simple argument here that I want to even tie this into health right now. One of the most powerful things, tell me if, now there's research to back this up, but just let's put the research aside. Tell me, like, the relationships with the people in your life, do they add, there's probably some that add to your health, right? Say your husband, your wife, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your children, etc. And then some people, they're like, you got to minimize your time with them because they really drain you. Energy vampires. And they could even be your parents. They could be your friends. They could be your uncles or your cousins or whoever, maybe even your brothers or sisters. We have people in our lives who add positivity to our lives. We have people in our lives that tend to be more neutral or maybe even negative. They subtract from our lives. They subtract energy. They subtract good feelings. Have you ever been really high on an emotion, on a positive emotion, and you share that with someone and they just they drain it all the way. You're like, man, I shouldn't have talked to you. I was feeling great until I talked to you. And what I want to tell you here is we catch emotions from each other. This is actually, as best as science can prove something like that. But there's been some psychological research showing this fact. We catch emotions from each other and we ripple these emotions out. And this is really important. This is one of my values that I live by. And I don't always do the best job. I mean, you've probably heard me on this podcast. If you've listened long enough, you can probably tell, oh, Ted is in the zone today, man. That podcast was pure fire. Then you've probably listened to me. Sometimes you're like, man, I had one client of mine. He's like, yeah, Ted, when I listened to that one podcast, that Real Talk Friday, I was like, man, Ted's going through some stuff, right? You probably can tell. And what I want to say here, what I'm getting at here is that let's be more mindful of the energy that we put out into the world. Let's be more mindful of our own energy. This is why health is so important. Health practices is so important. This is why it's so important to have a routine to create good energy. An interesting fact is when you're low energy, you don't have the energy to go work out. But if you can manage to drag yourself to the gym and get in a walk on the treadmill or lift a few weights or whatever it is, you feel better. That's really, I mean, if we're talking about the most powerful effect of exercise, that's really it. We talk about the fat loss and I'm going to live for a long time because the sarcopenia will be, we talk about the sciencey stuff, but the reality is we feel better when we exercise. And it's why it's crucial. For number one, you got to start with your own energy. You got to have routines that build your energy. One thing that I really struggled with as a personal trainer is I loved my job for the first 10 years when I was doing it, but the second decade that I was in it, it was sucking my energy away. It was hard to go to work. I just felt like I wasn't making a difference. I was babysitting my clients, counting reps. They go off to Europe for a few months, get fat, come back. Oh, I got to work with you, Ted. Let's do, 5 times a week. And then I would, it would just be, there wasn't any growth there. These people were, by the way, that's another little tip. I don't care how much money is someone making. I don't care what you think their lifestyle is like, your boss's lifestyle is like, or if you're a business owner, you're some of your entrepreneur friends. People are struggling out there, right? A lot of people are stuck in ruts. Doesn't matter what it matters less about the amount of money they have and more about their emotional state. Now, you have more resources when you have more money, for sure. It's a better place to be. But the problem is people buy cocaine, prostitutes, and Ferraris instead of hiring someone like me or a therapist or doing some or starting a charity, being involved in something that gives, you know what I mean? It's more about this. And this is how you can level up as a person. This is one of the things that I live by. How do I boost my energy so that all the interactions that I have, let's not say all because it's too high of an expectation, especially when shit goes wrong in our lives, right? I've not been my best recently. I hope you haven't been able to tell that much. But ever since my dad died, I've been struggling to get my groove back. My dad represented my purpose. I got my ass to work every day to make that happen. Now I'm comfortable. I have got money in the bank. Of course, I haven't, been working on building my business as much. So I need to do something, but I need to keep the party going here. I need to keep the business growing here. But what I'm trying to say is I've kind of lost that purpose that was my dad. And I've been trying to find a replacement for that, trying to find what's next, not trying to, but really taking action on discovering it. And I feel like I'm going off on a tangent a little bit, but I think it's an important one. And most of what finding that, right? Because you don't find it, you just go in, you got to find a direction to walk in. You find a direction to go in. And there's so many directions to go in. And I'll tell you, the direction to go in for every single one of us is the direction that makes us feel good physically, emotionally, mentally, dare I say spiritually. That is the direction to walk in. That's how you boost your personal power. That's how you boost your personal influence. And if you think about what you do in your life right now, how can I have a better effect on the world and the people around me? The way to do that is by focusing on what I'm talking about with you right now, being the change you want to see in the world. And it doesn't have to be a specific political change. In fact, it shouldn't be. It's like the world I want to live in is going to be all Democrats or all Republicans or whatever it is. That's not it. The world, because we need other ideas to bounce off of, to check us so we don't get too caught up in our own confirmation bias, AKA bullshit. What we need is to become the best versions of ourselves, and things will work out naturally if that happens. But what are people doing right now? Even the people who want to fight injustice, what do? They're feeling terrible. They're angry. They're stressed. They're not able to communicate. They yell, they scream, they make nasty posts on the internet, on social media. It is not the way to go about enacting positive change. You've got to be positive to enact positive change. And that positivity starts with you. It starts inside you. And it is so tough sometimes. At least for me, it is. Hopefully, it's not that tough for you. Hopefully, being positive and spreading positivity to everyone in your life comes easy. But for me, it doesn't. I've had a lot of shit go on in my life. I've had a lot of shit go wrong in my life. I mean, my life is like a movie, right? Some of the tragedies, my brother was kidnapped and murdered. My sister committed suicide. My mother was mentally ill. It's just crazy, the story. And I'm not the only one, by the way. You know, I always share that story, and sometimes it rubs people the wrong way because they think I'm sharing it for, to get some type of attention. But the truth is, I share it because it does get your attention in the way that I want, which is, oh, this guy has been through some stuff in life. Let me see what he has to say about it, because he seems to be doing all right for himself. That's why I share it. The other reason is because there's a lot of people, when I share my story, and you might be one of these people start opening up to me and they tell me their stories and what they've been through. And let me tell you, folks, people have been through some shit. They just don't share it. They just don't share it. And so for whatever reason, they're not comfortable sharing it. They don't want the world to know about their problems. They want to keep their life private. Well, I don't know. But for me, I never had a choice. When my brother was murdered, it was all over the news. So everyone in Miami knew it was a thing. So I just got comfortable being in the public eye as a result. And it took me years to even talk about it. And again, because I wanted to make sure that when I talked about it, because I don't know if I've shared this with you. I'm sure I have, but just not in a long time. But when I was a personal trainer, I had people in the gym that I worked at come up to me because they worked in the news. They worked as news anchors, and they were like, "Hey, let's do a story on you and your brother and all these things." And I said, no, I didn't want to have my 5 minutes of fame as someone's. You know what I felt like that was like? Have you ever seen a car accident and it's really bad and people all slow down and people are all just looking at the person or people who are all messed up in the car accident on the side of the road? I've always hated that. And the reason why is people are looking, they're like, man, ooh, you got messed up. And it's like this stress. It's like a cheap thrill. And then people drive off and don't think about it, right? It's like just a cheap thrill, and it makes no real meaningful impact on their life. Now, maybe they drive a little slower, right? Oh, let me slow down here. Yeah, I don't want to end up like them. But but that's even for the rest of their drive. They could get back in the car later and then speed around like an asshole again, So what I'm saying here is I wanted to share my story in a way that had a positive impact. And again, this is something that I want you to think about. It's not whether you're right or not. It's not whether you're on the side of justice or not. It's how you make other people feel. And really interesting, I want to share this with you because I had a conversation about this. I said something about this on social media, and someone accused me of tone policing. Oh, you're tone policing. I'm like, look, I know why you say that. You think that I'm trying to tell you to be nice, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm not telling you to be nice, and I'm not that nice of a person. Try threatening my family, and you'll find out how not nice I am and how willing to enact violence I am. So sorry for the extreme example there, but I just want to distinguish between being nice and being mindful of the emotional impact that you're having on other people. Be mindful of it because it matters. It matters so much. And you see so many people who want to fight for a better world, and they're doing it by spreading negativity. It will never work, and it won't work for the simple reason that's not how human beings are wired, man. It's really simple. It's really simple. This is going to seem like an out there left field segue, but it's not. There is a great TED Talk that I've talked about on this podcast before, John Gottman, The Science of Love, JohnGottman. And this guy, what he did was he looked at couples. Let me put it like this. If you go to marriage counseling, it's like, okay, talk to us about your problems. What is your side? John, what is your problem with Jane? Okay, John. Now, Jane, what is your problem with John? And then we talk, explain, tell our stories. We're all such great storytellers, and it's great. Stories are great. I love stories. After I'm done with this podcast, I'm going to hop in bed. It's about nearly 8 p.m. right now. I'm going to watch a story, AKA a movie on Amazon. And it's great. But the truth about human beings is that we're much more simple than the complex intellectualizations would have you believe. What this brilliant man did is he put people in a room where he couldn't hear what they were saying. And what he did was he attached some biofeedback devices to the couples, to the people in the relationship, right? He attached something to measure their blood pressure, something to measure their pulse, something to measure their breathing rate, something to measure something called galvanic skin response. Well, what is galvanic skin response? Well, have you ever, if you're like me and you watch some of those crazy parkour videos that were making the rounds a couple years ago, where these people are jumping from one building to another and your hands got really sweaty? Well, that's what the galvanic skin response measures. It measures, are you sweating? And that's it's actually one of the best biofeedback devices you can have because it's so sensitive. So I've been told. So I've read. And what he found is this: it had less to do with what the people were saying, but more to do with their emotional reactivity to one another. In fact, does that make sense? In other words, it had less to do with like, well, you don't clean the dishes after dinner. Oh, yeah, well, you don't take out the garbage. Oh, yeah, well, you do everything. You don't do enough for the kids. Or, oh, I'm busy at working and I feel like you don't appreciate. It's not about what we're saying. It's about how intense are the emotional reactions to each other and how many of them are there. In fact, this brilliant man, because I believe this is such groundbreaking stuff here, groundbreaking science here. What he found was that the magic ratio is that you need 5 good experiences to every 1 bad experience. That means for every 1 negative feeling or interaction between partners, there must be 5 positive feelings or interactions. And the stable, happy couples that I can't even say stay together because a lot of miserable people stay together, right? But the ones that are stable and happy, they share more positive feelings and actions than negative ones. How simple is that? How profound is that? Please go watch his TED Talk, The Science of Love, John Gottman, JohnGottman. Watch it more than once. Watch it once a month if you want to improve your relationship. Get his book, read it. And coming back to what we're saying here is this magic ratio that John Gottman figured out in between couples, it matters in between everybody. It matters with your kids. It matters with your friends. It matters with the people, the random people who you interact with during your day. It matters who you interact with online. And one thing I try to do is I try to curate. I try to do my best to have a positive impact on people, to be mindful of that positive impact. And again, I'm not talking about nice. I'm not talking about suppressing your emotions. I'm not talking about if someone wrongs you, that you're nice to them. If your boss comes and asks you to put covers on the TPS reports or to ask you to work on Sundays, I'm not saying you should be nice and be a doormat. What I am saying is really think about the impact that you're having on others. Are you having a positive impact? Are you having negative interactions, positive feelings in positive interactions? Or are you having more negative feelings, more negative interactions? And one of the keys to having more positive interactions is making sure that you're in a positive space, making sure that your relationship with yourself, you're having positive feelings and positive interactions with yourself. It's so important. and something that I've been struggling with a lot for the reasons that I've shared in the past few months. And it's been harder than usual. Sometimes it was coming so effortlessly, but after my dad died and everything, not just his death, but everything that represents, everything that I had to deal with as he was dying, everything that happened, everything that it means about my family and all of them being gone now, all these things that came back, that positive interaction with myself, the positive feelings, the positive interactions with myself, right? Because I've been struggling with I'm 44, I'm single, I don't have children, I really want children. Oh man, that's going to be hard. Well, I had a conversation with someone a couple years ago, and he's like, man, that boat has sailed. You're already the age that you're at. And, let's say that you live to 80 years old, that's going to be 36 years from now, right? And if you have a kid in a year, you're going to die when, I'm just going to have less time with them. The ship has sailed. I can't go back to my 20s or early 30s and have a kid, or I can't go back a year and have a kid. And so it's these things that I've been thinking about, right? Because I feel like I'm the savior of my family. Not because I say I am, because believe me, I'd rather have a different job. And I never had that job when I was in my family. Okay. So I'm not saying it like I don't have a savior complex. I've got the opposite, but it's fallen onto me to do something with my family's legacy, or no one does anything because we're all dead. My sister didn't have children, So again, what are you taking away from this? What is your relationship with yourself? How many positive feelings and interactions do you have with yourself compared to negative ones? That's a first place to start. And then starting with the people who are closest to you. And this is a tough one. When I shared this when I was dealing with my dad, I was really struggling. I mean, he was not happy. Towards the end, he made peace with what was happening with his death, really. But man, he was kicking and screaming. He was fighting hard and against a battle that you can't win, that nobody can, So the point is, we really got to start there. We got to start creating more positive interactions with ourselves, more positive feelings with ourselves, truly positive feelings and interactions, not looking in the mirror like, I forget that guy's name, but there was an SNL character. For those of you who are in SNL fans, Saturday Night Live fans, he would look in the mirror. He was this caricature of a self-help guy. And he'd say, you're smart enough, you're good enough, and gosh darn it, people like you. We're not talking about that. That's bullshit, okay? You say something that you don't really believe, there's even science showing the only time affirmations help are with people who already believe them. But if you're struggling with self-esteem, what you've got to do, you've got to go have those experiences, my friend. You've got to get out there and you've got to live life. Right now, it's harder than ever, partly because we're in the pandemic and things are shut down and you can't go where you want. But the other reason is we're all online. We're living our lives online. Our interactions are with our social media, quote unquote, friends. And the key to get around that is, people looked at my, people sometimes wonder why I do like some of these so-called extreme things like skydiving, like cave diving, like deep diving. It's not really that deep, 100 feet deep. It's not really deep scuba diving, but you know what I mean? It's deep for people who don't scuba dive, okay? Or even people who've casually scuba dived. And it's to challenge myself. The number one way you can create more self-esteem, self-worth is by doing those things that you're afraid to do. Doing those things that you're afraid to do. And this, my friends, this is the key to everything. If more people stepped up and handled their emotional baggage, that's the better world. We say, oh, if everyone did this or that, or, but really what we're talking about, at least this is my argument, my opinion, it's about us being better people that will naturally create the world that we all want to live in, because we won't be having all these negative interactions with each other. Oh my gosh, on the road, on social media, in protests, It's an inside job, folks. We can't point our fingers and beat people over the head. At the end of the day, when we cancel all the people who we thought were causing our pain, our emotional pain, when we get rid of everyone, we're still going to be left with ourselves. And hopefully it doesn't take that for us to realize this is where we should have started all along. So folks, you want to be a better parent, you want to be a better business owner, you want to be a better attorney, accountant, executive, a better friend, better partner, a person that can change the world. Start with yourself and start thinking about those positive interactions. How many, one of the reasons that my wife and I aren't together, my ex-wife and I aren't together, and we're business partners, there were just too many negative interactions. We have so many positive interactions with the business, but just on a personal level, it just didn't work out. It was causing too much stress. And what I want to cover in the next RTF is about this and talk more about this, because stress, folks, this is what we're talking about. The more negative interactions we have with ourselves, the more stressed we're going to be. The more negative interactions that we have with other people, the more stressed we're going to be, the more stressed they're going to be. Even if they don't care about you, it's something that they've got to deal with, right? It's something we have to deal with. The only people that are free from this are sociopaths and psychopaths. Okay, those are the only people that get off. They're just not reactive to caring about this type of stuff. But if you're a normal human being, like 99, I don't know what the incidence of psychopathy is in society, but it's got to be pretty small. We're all mostly bouncing off and having to deal with each other's negative emotions. So the more stress we create in our society, the worse our society is going to do. So you want to be the change in the world? That's where it starts. That's what I've got to share with you. I hope you enjoyed today. Talked a little bit longer than I had planned to, but I wanted to talk this out with you. I wanted to, really work through this with you. And I can't wait to share more. I'm coming out of my funk, and I really want to make a positive difference. And I'm going to be more mindful of how I show up on these podcasts to make sure that I'm my best for you. All right. And I want you to consider doing the same for yourself and for those people who you care about. And even, folks, the people that you don't care about, because we're all in this together. All right. Love you so much. Love that we have these conversations on Friday. Really want the best for you. Really want you to win. And I hope you got a lot out of today. Have an amazing weekend, and I'll speak to you on Monday. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of the Legendary Life Podcast. If you haven't done so already, please take a minute and leave us a quick rating and review of the show on Apple Podcasts by clicking on the subscribe button on your left. Then write a sentence or two saying what you love about our podcast. Please be honest. Tell us what you think, what you'd like to hear, what we can change to make it better. It will support the show and help us to keep delivering life-changing information for you every week.